Welcome back to Xbox Corner, my name's Luke, and with Halloween well and truly upon us, we thought what better time to check out some scary games. And so today on the channel we've rounded up our favourite selection of spine tinglers available to play right now on Xbox Game Pass. Now it's worth noting that this list of games is not ranked in any way, and not all of the games on the list are out and out horror titles, but they definitely have enough going for them to put the heebie-jeebies up here. So with that said, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to keep up to date with all our latest content, and let's get started. So up first we have the newest addition to the Game Pass selection of horrors known as Visage. It's a first-person psychological horror game heavily inspired by the infamous Silent Hill's PT demo, and it sees players exploring a huge maze-like mansion as they investigate the backstories of its previous occupants. Gameplay sees you working your way through the mansion, solving puzzles and uncovering the truth about the mansion's grim past, and the game features a sanity mechanic similar to the Amnesia games, whereby standing in the dark too long will cause supernatural events to occur. This one is a real slow burner though, and a lot of its horror elements come from its atmospheric environment rather than relying on straight up jump scares, so if you're looking for a less action orientated horror experience, then Visage definitely has that to offer. Next up we have Back 4 Blood, spiritual successor to the fantastic Left 4 Dead franchise, which once again pits a team of 4 survivors against an army of zombies as they attempt to fight back against the hordes of Medan and reclaim the world. Now this one takes everything great about the original games and builds on them, adding a new roguelike card system which changes up the game each time you play and allowing you to build decks full of perks to take on increasingly challenging fights. As with its predecessors, gameplay in Back 4 Blood sees you making your way through each level, completing objectives and fighting or attempting to avoid the Ridden, which come in a number of different forms, and in addition to the 4-player co-op story campaign, there's also an online PvP mode which pits survivors against human-controlled Ridden. Me and Alex had a great time playing the beta of Back 4 Blood, and if you enjoyed the chaotic co-op gameplay of the original, then you'll no doubt have a blast playing this one. Our next game is Alan Wake's American Nightmare, a classic Xbox 360 title which was a spin-off of the original Alan Wake game, and it features a standalone storyline where Alan has to fight to stop his murderous evil doppelganger from ruining his life. Compared to the first game though, American Nightmare is more action oriented, featuring a wider variety of weapons and putting more of a focus on the combat elements. It also includes an arcade mode which sees you trying to survive until sunrise against wave after wave of enemies, and alongside the recently released Alan Wake Remastered, it's definitely a solid pick for a Halloween horror fest. Next up we have possibly my favourite horror title on our list, 2014's Alien Isolation. Set 15 years after the events of the original movie, the game sees you playing as Ellen Ripley's daughter as she heads to a remote trading station to investigate her mother's disappearance, only to find an alien horror laying in wait for her. Much like the Amnesia and Outlast games, players are left unarmed to face the alien threat and do whatever they can to survive against it, with only a motion detector and improvised tools to keep it at bay, and the dynamic AI of the game's alien offers unpredictable encounters with it, keeping the tension high from start to finish. The atmosphere and gameplay in this one though are a true testament to how far we've come with horror titles, and if you've ever wondered what it was like for Ripley to go one-on-one against a xenomorph, then Alien Isolation will be able to answer that question for you. Our next title is in fact 3 titles, those being the original Dead Space games which released a fair few years back now, but still offer one of the best survival horror experiences to date, although in my opinion the third title did kind of drop the ball a bit. Now the Dead Space games draw inspiration from the likes of Resident Evil 4 and Silent Hill, featuring third-person gameplay which sees players taking on the role of Isaac Clarke, a retired engineer forced to fight for his life against mutant reanimated corpses known as necromorphs. Gameplay features a fantastic mixture of atmospheric and psychological horror, action and environmental puzzle solving, and at the time the game was praised for its innovative combat mechanics whereby necromorphs' limbs must first be severed in order to defeat them. These ones though are true classics of the genre, and if you're a fan of horror games but haven't yet taken the time out to play them, then I highly recommend you do. Up next is id Software's Doom 3, a first-person survival horror game which originally released back in 2004, but just like its predecessors has stood the test of time and still offers a terrifying gameplay experience. Now, many people will no doubt be familiar with the fast-paced run and gun gameplay of the recent Doom games, but Doom 3 actually acted as the first reboot to the series, and while it does put more emphasis on the horror elements, there is still a decent amount of combat to be had in the game. Featuring semi-linear level design and a more story-oriented approach, Doom 3 reimagines the events of the first game and of the origins of the demons which have overrun the Mars-based research facility, but staying true to its roots, you once again assume the role of a space marine attempting to stop the demon invasion, though it hasn't quite yet attained the status of Doomslayer, so don't expect to be ripping demons apart with your bare hands in this one. So the next game on our list is Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, and though it doesn't quite fall into the same category of horror as our previous titles, its dark and unsettling atmosphere and the psychological horror elements brought on by the psyche of the game's protagonist still make it a worthy entry on our list. Taking place in the late 8th century, Hellblade follows the story of Senua, a picked warrior on a quest to save the soul of her dead lover, and the game sees you travelling into Helheim, the Norse afterlife, in an attempt to rescue him. Here, she faces many trials, including environmental puzzles and combat with the malformed Norsemen, inhabitants of Hell who stand to block her progression, but throughout the game, Senua also battles with psychosis and the voices in her head, as she struggles to distinguish between reality and her delusions. The game offers a very memorable experience though. It's been widely praised for its portrayal of mental illness, and if you're looking for a uniquely different horror experience, then I highly recommend checking it out. So back to some classic survival horror now with The Evil Within 1 and 2, a series of games directed by the legendary Shinji Mikami, the mind behind the original Resident Evil games. Now the format of the first Evil Within is most similar to Resident Evil 4, while the second features larger, more open environments with multiple routes through them, though both games put more of an emphasis on stealth rather than straight up action, and the storylines have plenty of depth and intricacy to them. There's still a decent amount of combat to be had in these games though, including some intense encounters with the nemesis-like Keeper in the first game, and if you're looking for something which strikes a good balance between its action and horror elements, then both of these games fit the bill nicely. Speaking of Resident Evil, next up we have Resident Evil 7, a game which diverts from the more action-oriented approach of the previous titles, returning to its survival horror roots with an emphasis on exploration. Now aside from the on-rails shooter Resident Evil Survival, Resident Evil 7 is the first game in the series to use a first-person perspective, and the game sees you playing as Ethan Winters as he searches a derelict estate for his missing wife Maya. Unfortunately though, once there he encounters the Bakers, a psychotic family who harbour a dark secret, and much like the original titles, Resident Evil 7 sees you moving back and forth between areas, solving puzzles and collecting key items to progress forward. While the game does include some combat elements as well as several intense boss fights, stealth once again plays a big part in this one, and while the game acts as a prequel to Resident Evil Village, the action elements are toned down, leading to a slower paced, more atmospheric horror experience. Our next title is The Medium, a psychological horror game exclusive to the Xbox Series X and S, featuring a unique gameplay mechanic which sees you exploring both the real world and the spirit world at the same time. Now the game sees you playing as Marianne, a psychic who taps into the spirit world to help troubled spirits move on, and after receiving a mysterious phone call from someone claiming to know the origins of her power, she then travels to an abandoned communist facility to meet this person. She soon discovers, however, that the facility is inhabited by a malicious entity known as the Maw, which persistently attempts to hunt down Marianne, and so she has to use her abilities to fight back against it, solve environmental puzzles, and uncover the truth about her powers and the facility's disturbing history. Now this one is more of a slow burner with an emphasis on puzzle solving, mystery and storytelling, but it's the dual reality gameplay mechanic which really sets it aside from other similar titles, and it's more than enough reason to warrant a playthrough of The Medium. Into our final few games now, and up next we have Outlast 2, sequel to the critically acclaimed Outlast, and while this second outing didn't quite meet expectations in terms of its storyline, its gameplay is still every bit as terrifying. Now similar to the first game, Outlast 2 puts you into the shoes of a journalist, but instead of wandering around a creepy mental asylum, this time round you're investigating a murder which leads you to a remote village in the Arizonian desert inhabited by a deranged sect who believe the end of days are upon them. Now gameplay in Outlast 2 takes on the familiar run and hide format of its predecessor with no combat outside of scripted events, but players are equipped with a more advanced video camera this time round, which has a clearer picture, more powerful zoom function, and a sensitive microphone which can be used to pinpoint the footsteps of enemies. If you've played the first Outlast, enjoyed its horror experience and were left wanting more, then Outlast 2 will no doubt be worth your time. So if you're looking for a more cinematic gameplay experience, then look no further than Man of Medan, the first of 8 planned installments in the Dark Pictures Anthology, a series of interactive drama games which followed the success of 2015's Until Dawn. Now Man of Medan sees players assuming the control of 5 different characters who become trapped on board a ghost ship and have to escape, and much like Until Dawn, gameplay is based around the players making decisions and selecting between different options during events, with the game's narrative changing and adapting to these choices with each playthrough. These branching story paths result in there being multiple endings to the game, with players able to save all of the characters or have some or all of them die, and alongside the online 2-player co-op mode, there's also a pass the controller movie night mode for up to 5 players, with each player assuming the role and making the decisions for an individual character, and this mode is perfect for a get-together with family or friends. Our final game on today's list is the asymmetric survival horror game that is Dead by Daylight, an online-only 1 vs 4 multiplayer game where one player takes the role of a savage killer while the other 4 players have to work together to try and escape the killer. The objective in each game requires survivors to repair 5 generators to unlock the exit gates while the killer attempts to catch them and then impale them on hooks to be sacrificed to a malevolent being known only as the Entity, and each of the game's survivors comes with their own perks, providing a versatile assortment of abilities to deal with the killer, while the killers themselves have their own unique active abilities, making for different playstyles. Now this one has been out for a while, but it has seen frequent updates introducing new survivors and killers from a whole host of other game and movie franchises, including the likes of Silent Hill, Resident Evil, Nightmare on Elm Street, and even Stranger Things. If you haven't yet played this one and are looking for something terrifying to play online with friends, then Dead by Daylight is a solid option. And so that about does it for our roundup of favourite horror titles on Game Pass. Hopefully you enjoyed this one and found something new to scare the socks off you, and if you did, let us know what it was in the comments section below. If you think something was missing from this list or deserved a shout out, then you can also let us know down below, and if you're looking for something a little less horrifying to play with others, then be sure to check out our video on the best couch co-op games available on Xbox Game Pass. For now though, as always, hit that like button, subscribe to stay up to date with all our latest deals, reviews and Game Pass content, and we'll see you all in the next video. Thanks everyone, take care.